Coming to you live from the Business RadioX studio, it's Franchise Marketing Radio, brought to you by IDS, an award-winning digital marketing agency that delivers integrated marketing solutions for franchisors, franchisees, and franchise development teams. Learn why over 75 brands depend on IDS's team of dedicated marketers and client service professionals to deliver a strong ROI on their marketing investment. Go to idsfranchisemarketing.com for a complimentary digital audit and consultation.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Franchise Marketing Radio. I'm your host, Rob Manley. Welcome back. And today, I have a powerhouse guest with us from the world of franchise marketing. Please welcome Angela Pauls. She is the Chief Marketing Officer of Buzz Franchise Brands. Now, she has a diverse background, and I can't wait to dive into it, but it spans everything from starting and running her own coffee shop earlier in her career, and now fast forwarding to being Chief Marketing Officer at one of the best collection of brands in franchising, Buzz Brands. So, Angela, thank you for being with us today. I know we have some really cool things to talk about around innovation and AI, and I can't wait to dig in, but welcome to the show.
Thanks, Rob. Great to be here.
All right, it's great to have you. So tell me a little bit about this. When I was, kind of diving into your LinkedIn profile and learning more about you, I learned a little bit about your experience earlier in your career with starting a coffee shop, or tell us a little bit about that story. But I think it also is a big reason why you are here today and kind of involved with what you're doing and why you're so passionate about it. But tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny that you bring that up because I feel like not a lot of people notice that about me on looking at the LinkedIn profile or anything. It's kind of buried amongst a bunch of other more traditional things. But yeah, I started a coffee shop when I was in my early 20s. I had come out of college and started a traditional career in advertising and marketing. But I always enjoyed the coffee shop environment, just the community of being in a coffee shop and the interesting people that come into coffee shops. And I was living in Austin, Texas, which is a very entrepreneurial city, and local business was everything. And so that made it even more so a special thing to go into a coffee shop and be able to meet people and have that great community. And at the time, I had a brother who had actually built plans for himself to start a coffee shop business. He had done the more traditional, put a bunch of time in, putting together a business plan, all that sort of thing, while I was working my, traditional day job sort of thing. And he didn't end up being able to get that business off the ground. He actually passed away. And so that sort of lit a little bit of a fire under me to maybe someday that's something I could do. And I originally thought of it as more of a longer term goal or thought after I, made enough money to actually do it, working a normal job, but ultimately decided to just go for it. And so I did it while working a full-time job. So I had a business partner in it with me, and I worked my day job from 8 to 5. And then I went straight to the coffee shop and relieved our staff. It was a coffee shop that also had nighttime activities. Live music is everywhere in Austin. So we had music at night. We served beer and wine in addition to coffee and other beverages. So it was a very social kind of place. And I did that for several years. It was my crash course in entrepreneurship, and having the perspective now that I have about franchising, it really helps me to understand the benefits of franchising, having gone into it with no formal business background other than, my education, but no formal entrepreneurship training, and really just figuring out a lot of things as I went and figuring out the right questions to ask and the right people to talk to. But it was a great experience. It was great from a business standpoint. We actually purchased a failing coffee shop and turned it around. So we were able to make it profitable within a year and then build on it from there. So yeah, it was definitely a meaningful part of my background, I would say.
I would say so too. I think of Austin. I love that city. It's just a cool vibe. But when I was a kid, I was a big Stevie Ray Vaughan fan, right? And he was
yes.
introduced him from Austin, Texas. And I'm like, that must be a cool place. So that's how my understanding of Austin came about, from the blues and live music and him. So he was an awesome guy. I liked his music. But since then, of course, it's been out there, and you're right. It's like a tech hub. I think Silicon Valley and Austin, it makes me think of those cities when I think of tech. So if you're interested in tech, you could probably hang out there, and music, live
Absolutely.
So
yeah,
anyway.
I think the live music part of it's been going longer than the tech part, but the tech part has definitely taken over, I would say, or at least on par with the live music.
Yeah, I think the techie people like the live music. I think that's they decided to move in. So anyway, but cool. So let's talk a little bit about you're managing multiple brands, right? And by the way, I think that's just brilliant that you went through that experience, because franchising is so much about, I learned a long time ago that the most successful people in the world are that way ultimately because they have specialized knowledge. At some points, they know specific things about certain things that produce a lot of impact, right? And a lot of times in business, that could be revenue and profit and growth. But it's important to understand that specialized knowledge usually is only developed through actually doing it and refining it over a period of time. And that's franchising. And when I think of franchising, really, it's like it's nothing but growth since it started, really. And it just keeps building momentum, because when you start a franchise business, you have much better odds because of that specialized knowledge to have success. So people that like yourself that get the pleasure of starting their own business get to understand all the things they didn't realize they didn't know, and they didn't even want to do. Actually, they weren't the things they even wanted to do. So that's a little bit of everything there. But so you're managing multiple brands. Tell me a little bit, before we dive into some specifics around tech and innovation. Tell me, just how do you approach that, though? Like, just the idea of having multiple brands. Obviously, they're different objectives. They have different branding. Like, as a CMO of all of them, what is some of the strategy you use to lead that and advance those brands?
Yeah, one of the things that I think we find in franchising is marketing tends to be one of the areas that a lot of franchisees don't have experience with coming in. And for some people, it's why they join a franchise, because they know it'll help give them that expertise. And some people just don't know what they don't know. But it's an area where there's I wouldn't say it's necessarily the same formula for every brand, but the structure there, the recipe for success in marketing is the same, for all brand. The tactics may vary, but kind of thinking about a structure of setting up a good marketing strategy or plan is all very similar across brands. So we have, certain practices that we use with our franchisees and certain basic strategies that we use in marketing that apply to all of our brands. There's just different than kind of nuances when you get down to targeting those tactics to a specific audience that would really depend based on the customer persona for each of your brands. But when it comes to kind of the higher level, all of our brands are doing digital marketing. All of our brands are doing local marketing in the community, getting out there and meeting people and networking and building partnerships. And they're all doing direct mail marketing. And I think one of the things that's made us successful has been having that marketing plan very structurally developed between us and our franchisees. So we don't just say, we think you should market, you should probably spend about this much money, let us know what you do. We actually sit down as they come through training. We have very specific marketing requirements that are outlined for our franchisees, so we can keep them from making some of those mistakes that some entrepreneurs and franchisees will make when they're too nervous about marketing to spend money before they're making money. I mean, that's tough, right? To go out there and spend a bunch of money when you're not profitable yet. And then when you are profitable, to feel like you should stop spending money because you've hit that mark, that's not a great idea either. You don't want to plateau. You want to keep growing. So being able to guide our franchisees and this is where you should start. And we're going to build a plan to reflect the tactics that we know work, because we've been running these brands for a while. We've got years of data that we can, look to start you off strong. And then we'll tweak it as we go, as we learn more about the nuances of your market, how people are responding to the different tactics that we're using, if there's certain messaging we want to adjust, that sort of thing. We'll tweak it throughout the year. So we stay in regular conversations with our franchisees throughout the year to look at some of those KPIs and trends that we may see.
Gotcha. So like in that, so you have these different, so you have a playbook for each brand essentially, and the playbook is extensive and multifaceted. Obviously it's a little different, but there are similarities with your brands. I think it's oriented on home services. And so there is some overlapping, but generally different playbooks. And so you're saying, so is there any process or technology innovation that you had to kind of put in place to make that easier, to try to deal with all these different brands and make sure it's efficient and everybody gets trained right and you can deploy things? And like, how does that look at 6 different brands? It seems challenging to me.
Yeah, well, certainly the structure of our team is set up intentionally to be able to support across multiple brands. So we have, each of our individual brands has their own marketing support and marketing team members that are 100% dedicated to that brand. So they spend all of their day focused on that brand. And then we have a layer of shared services marketing. And so these are certain functionalities within marketing that support across the same team, supporting across all 4 of our brands. So that's our digital marketing team. We have a direct mail marketing team. We have a creative team. Those groups are supporting across the board. And so that affords us the ability to always know what's going on across the different brands so we can learn from each other. So if we try a new tactic with one brand or a new vendor partner with one brand and it works really well, we can apply those best practices across the other brands as well, or at least where relevant. There may be nuances that make it appropriate or not, but I think that's another benefit of being able to say, okay, we can roll out a technology with one brand first. And once we have all the kinks worked out of it, we can roll it out even easier across additional brands.
Yeah. So when I'm just curious, just getting into depth a little with the technical parts of digital marketing, like, media buying, if you're going to do a Google ads campaign or Facebook ads, things like that. It's kind of technical, right? A lot of clicking and understanding those platforms, dealing with those technologies. Is that something you do internally, or is that something you partner with? Or did you actually, at the buzz level, you built that sort of capability internally?
Yeah, it can be a little bit of both depending on the nuance. A lot of our digital we do handle in-house. We've done and we've sort of evolved that, I would say, over time. Certainly when we started out and we were one brand, we were outsourcing a lot of that work because we had a very small team. I mean, I think that's what the situation for a lot of emerging brands. Now that we've got multiple brands in our portfolio, if we launch a new brand or acquire a new brand, we already have the structure and the team support to provide being able to do that sort of work in-house. But we do leverage partners in certain areas to help make sure we're being as efficient as we can in that sort of media buying as well.
Yeah. It depends what you're trying to get done, but sometimes it's a steep mountain to climb, depending what you're doing. So I think a YouTube video, some of the work I've done, it's a lot. It can be a lot. Seems easy on the surface.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, all right, let's dive into the big question of the day, and something I really appreciate your input on, because I know this is something that you've been involved in for a while, and you're humble about it. But I think you have been involved with AI and using figuring out how to use it right in brands and make it efficient in marketing, which obviously sales and marketing, I think, is a big place where AI really can help. So I wanted to start first with just a bigger picture. I mean, this is kind of a big sort of visionary question, but how do you see technologies like ChatGPT, large language models, right? And now Google has Bard, and there's others everywhere cropping up. And but how do you see? Because a lot of what this is being able to create content, being able to create any form of content, really, in terms of text and things, and more to come, and soon images and video. But how do you see it transforming like a marketing department? And maybe in the short term, I know in the long term, most of us are like, even the experts aren't sure. But like in the short term, what are you seeing? And I know you're doing some things already. But yeah, what do you see? How is it transforming, I guess, your departments and teams?
Yeah, I think there is, I like to spend my time thinking about the positives of AI and not the stuff that can totally get scary if you think too much about it.
Yeah.
But looking at the ways that we can use it to help support what we're doing on a daily basis. And I think a lot of that comes down to finding efficiencies and finding ways that we can sort of do more with less. As someone who was an entrepreneur at a young age and also the youngest sibling, I feel like I've always been a bit of a scrappy person. I'm going to figure it out on my own. And I feel like there's a lot of AI tools that allow someone who doesn't have a full team or something to be able to do a lot more by themselves. And so we're trying to find ways to incorporate and step back to think about, okay, what sort of tasks are we doing that we're either doing it repetitively and it's just kind of a more mundane task that doesn't take I shouldn't say it doesn't take a lot of brain power, but it's something that like we're just doing it over and over, and it doesn't necessarily need to be my brain on it every time. But whether it's the amount of time we spend, recapping meetings or things of that nature, or maybe it's sort of writing the same emails over and over. A lot of it's content marketing when we're trying to spend time around writing blogs and optimizing and outlining presentations and that sort of thing. AI is not going to be writing those things perfectly, but where it's particularly helpful is just getting you started, getting things outlined for you. And then once you have something written, being able to get some other perspective on it, even if you just upload something you've written into ChatGPT and say, how can I make this better? Or how can I make this more SEO optimized or whatever it may be? It's just like having another brain in the room. It's not something that should be fully trusted at this point, but it is additional perspective, and it certainly helps to I think speed up the process of creating a lot of content and doing a lot of the ongoing regular tasks that we have.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about that. So we're all dealing with a lot. I was going to ask you, I was going to put you on the spot and say, does AI scare you? And you kind of already.
But I don't want to talk about it.
There's enough. Well, there's more now. Anyway, I'm glad there's enough. I think we need to take it seriously, but let's look at the positives because there are that side. I appreciate that. In terms of when you think about content marketing, like before all this started, like about a year ago when ChatGPT made this available, the idea of content marketing, having a calendar, you're obviously doing that work for many reasons. One is to be more prominent on Google or organic, channels, reputation, branding, all those reasons. But when you think of content marketing, man, there's a lot of versions of content, right? You could have a pretty robust calendar if you had the ability to do so, like podcasts and videos and blog posts and social posts and things of that nature. So it was always a big mountain to climb to say, let's do content marketing, let's make this impact. Now that you have this idea of AI that can create content and do it much quicker, but as you just said, you just alluded to, there has to be sort of this QA process. There has to be still this screening first with the strategy of why we're doing it. How's it serving our customer is how I obviously everything we do here should be, we're improving our game. We're just doing better, right? So maybe we didn't have time before, but now that we do, we'll do this. So if you're going to do something with AI, it should be not just more for more sake. In other words, it's more because we figure this is a better thing for our audience. But how do you deal with that QA sort of idea? Where do you take it? You guys obviously have strategies for calendars and content and doing that side of marketing. How is that influencing that? Or are you doing stuff there to try to make that go faster? How's that look with that kind of content?
I think one way to think about it is that AI can act as an intern for us. So, we have summer interns every year, Buzz Franchise Brands. And from a marketing perspective, we often have interns helping with content creation and that sort of thing. And we train them a bit on our company and our branding and the the tones that we use and personality of each brand before they start writing. But then, we let them write blogs or we let them create content. But we always go through and check them after. We don't just blindly publish what they write without making sure that it's authentic to our brand and that it's accomplishing the goals that we want to accomplish. I think when we think about AI and ChatGPT for supporting things like that, it's very similar. It's we can use it to help us do things faster and to take some of the weight off, but we always need to go through and make sure it's authentic to the brand, because people are very aware that AI is out there and that a lot of content is getting generated either by or using AI. And so they're not dumb to the fact of reading an authentically written article. One of the things that is very well known about AI is that it doesn't have that human empathy component to it. And so you can sense that, when you're reading different content. Marketing is all about storytelling. And sometimes we need to have that layer of humanity to it for it to really come across as authentic. So I think that's important. It's train it as you use it, but always check its work as well.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And it's like your brand is it's more than even the words, right? It's like the feeling it's transferring, and it's you definitely have to filter for that part, right? Like, is it making us feel like we want with that story? What is the intent of telling that particular story? So yeah, that makes perfect sense. So let's break it down into franchise. Maybe you could speak to, because I know, well, before I get into franchisees, I wanted to talk a little bit about technology. I know we had talked before. And so when you think about these large language models, a lot of the application of it. So we talked about one application, which is content creation, and ideas and things like that, being an assistant and helping us accelerate our work. But then the other side is like these softwares, all these different tools out there can access this same capability in the dialogue. So for instance, we could have some kind of experience where someone's chatting or texting and interacting with this same intelligence, if you will, ChatGPT. That's usually the de facto standard right now of what softwares are plugging into. But some have used other AI language models prior to ChatGPT. And I know you guys have been involved with some stuff even prior to ChatGPT to help with that side of things, where you're engaging customers at different stages of maybe the sales pipeline. Maybe you're answering questions, maybe you're booking meetings, but it's actually the same sort of intelligence that's interacting as we're asking to write a blog article. So how has that been working for you? I know that you've been using some of that in some of your operations and some of the brands. I don't know if it's all the brands. Tell us a little bit about how that has been working and your experiences prior to ChatGPT, because you've been involved even before that.
Yeah. And I think some of the things that we were involved in, I don't think we talked about it so much as AI, even though that's what it was at the time, because we just didn't have we hadn't yet had this explosion of everybody talking about AI and artificial intelligence in the way that it is now. I mean, I'm sure when we first set things up, the software we were working with phrased it that way, but it didn't jump out the way that it does now. So we have been using it in a few different ways for several years now. And one of those being in the franchise development process and across all of our brands, we have used the technology to help reach leads faster and help communicate, help them get calls set up with our sales team. And it was the same thing that is now becoming a very commonplace practice. Basically we teach we train and teach on some of the frequently asked questions, these it's basically texting platforms, text software that can help engage with franchise prospects and help them get calls set up. But sometimes they reply back to those text messages as humans, feeling as if they're interacting with a human. So we also need to make sure that the bot that's responding to them can answer and recognize what they're asking about, whether it's a cost question, whether it's a scheduling, needing to reschedule, that sort of thing. And certainly that technology has gotten better and better over the course of the time that we've been using it. But it is something that we found effective because it's something, that allows, in the case of franchise development, people are all around the world and all across different time zones when they're reaching out to us for more information. And everybody will tell you that, speed to lead is the important thing, right? We want to make sure to get back to people as fast as possible.
So glad. I'm sorry to interrupt. I had to jump in. I was dying to ask you about like the impact. So it's like speed to lead. And then the other thing they always say is follow up like 6 to 8 times, right? Because if they don't respond, and we know people can't do that. We know that people get sick. They go, all right, I'll stop. You go ahead and finish your answer. But I love it. I was gonna, yeah.
So we had a great sales team who's getting to leads as fast as they can. But when it comes to after hours and weekends and things like that, they're not available 100% of the time. Whereas, if we've got some AI technology that can reach out immediately and say, hey, we can go ahead and get something scheduled for you and the sales team, then the sales team can come back in the next day or at the end of the weekend or whatever, and already have new calls set up with candidates that came in, at times when they weren't available.
So tell me a little bit, educate me, because like you're really using this, and I think it's awesome. So the idea of speed to lead, right? Of course, the idea is connection rate, right? We want to improve connection rate in getting a hold of somebody. And so you do, and you interact, this AI interacts with the prospect because it can be consistent and always follow up within 5 minutes or something, speed to lead, 5 minutes. But so have you attempted to, or have you found that you can adjust the interactions to qualify leads better? Have you tried that, or is it just, hey, you figure if you can drive the connection rate higher, get people on a calendar, then you're going to talk to more people? Is that obviously that's one thing. The other thing would be you could actually qualify better, maybe just filter some budget issues or filter some territory issues. They're the big ones. Have you tried to use it in that way to say, let's not even book that meeting, or is it just trying to get to speed to lead? And where has the biggest impact's been made, do you think?
I would say for us, it has been the speed to lead side of things, and then just the time saving on our sales team when it comes to trying to get that first call set up. So, there's a lot of time spent on their side trying to do outbound calling to new leads or emails or whatever it is to new leads, just to try to get them on the phone. And having a system that's able to do that for them, they can be focused on the leads that we have made contact with and had sales conversations with, and be spending their effort and rapport on those more qualified leads than the ones that are, just at that first stage and maybe are saying, wait, I don't remember if I requested information or not, or what,
Yeah.
We're kind of just taking those out of the picture when it comes to time savings.
Yeah, I was just thinking, like, you're on your 9th attempt, right, to get a hold of someone, and they barely.
Yeah.
It's like you're putting the emphasis and the energy to the wrong person. It's better to follow up with someone you've already talked to for 20 minutes. They seem good, and now you're putting some energy behind giving them more attention, and that's great. Yeah, that front end part has always been the one that's really hard, and it just seems to be. And so you won an award a year ago about being a game changer. Well, you're a game changer. Like, that's hard. That's the smart move. And I know the company you worked with, they were innovative. As you said, I'm wondering what they're thinking now. But they were very innovative, and there weren't many ways to do what you did. So you found a way. And you're right. I think more and more now we'll realize, wait a minute, what are we doing? We should be doing this. But it's going to be a little more accessible now, I think, for different folks. But that's a different application of this same technology that's coming from these large language models, these repositories of data and intelligence, right, that we can connect to and use to communicate with our customers. Yeah. So I'm just thinking, man, this seems like a whole different language I'm talking when I talk like that. But anyway, it is what it is. So that's FranDev, and that seems like pretty much standard for almost any brand. Like, you should have something like that. Now, when you think about the franchisees, you are in a brand where I do think appointments are probably part of it, and scheduling things and that nature. How does that look? Are you doing it at that level as well, and how does it work there? Same thing as you're doing on FranDev? Same kind of approach?
Yeah, applying similar technologies, people who fall out of a information request process, or for example, with our British from School brand, people who are starting to enroll in a class, but some at some point in the process fall out, we're able to continue that communication with them and figure out if there was a problem or if they changed their mind or what happened that they didn't complete the process. We're able to use some tools to be able to facilitate that without our franchisees having to do all that manually. So that's, again, something that's very time saving. But I think all of that is just going to continue. There's going to be more and more things that come into play, around that. We have our franchisee convention coming up, and I think that's going to be some of the conversations that we're having with people. And some of it's just very high level education and understanding, because I forget, I talk to people. It's easy to feel behind in AI because it's changing so much. And if you're into it, you're always reading new things. I mean, I follow people on LinkedIn about AI. I sit in on webinars. I do all the things because it's very interesting to me. And I think it's really important for us to be as on the front of it as we can, to be leveraging it the best that we can for our companies and our franchisees. But a lot of people are overwhelmed. So I don't realize, I always think I'm behind. And then I talk to other people. I'm like, oh, maybe we're actually a little bit ahead of other people. But I think when you look at a base of franchisees, a lot of them are just kind of like, they haven't done a whole lot because they're overwhelmed and they don't have time to think about it or to sit down and think about the right use cases that could save them some time. So I think it's important for us to be starting to do that and starting to help them understand, here's how you can use it effectively, but also it's really important to know how to not trust it too much and how to keep a level of security and privacy, and don't be putting a bunch of confidential company information in there and that sort of thing. So helping them understand the best practices to use it efficiently and to use it safely.
Yeah, you had mentioned something I thought was a golden nugget. I wanted to just kind of just for the audience, break it down a little. So at the top of the funnel, when you struggle getting a hold of folks, you spend money on marketing, you bring them to a website, they reach out, and maybe there's no one there to connect with them. Then there's a follow-up process that's the gap. That's the fall off where we talk about speed to lead and follow-up that's challenging. So we talked earlier, AI, this capability, that could be a gap filler there. But then you went on to say something else that I thought was a unique distinction, which was if someone is supposed to come and doesn't come, you can follow up, and passively in the background, this AI, which is functioning almost like a person, is following up with people that might miss a meeting. And you're able to rebook or reschedule or just whatever, if someone cancels or whatever. That's another big area that would affect connection rate or that ability to really get the most out of your marketing. So 2 applications in the pipeline right there so just wanted to point that out. I thought they were complementary versus the similar, the same thing. So I think that's awesome. But I think that's right. I mean, when you think about where else in the pipeline can we put that? What else would be helpful, right? So it's a matter of creativity. But then you said, how do we share this with folks? We talked about overwhelm a little, and I feel like there's 3 sort of people. There's the people like the ostrich with the head in the sand, like I'm already overwhelmed. So, and then there's the folks that are a little bit freaked out, like this is a little scary, and just hesitant. And then there's the third, which is probably like more like me and you, where we're going to read stuff every day and we're like, wow, that's pretty cool. But it's just like coming at rapid fire. I know what you mean, because I was always the kind of person that said, I love being on email newsletters and I love getting like a lot of information from different people because I felt like it kept me up to date. Now I feel like there's no way to keep up with all this. This is insane. And so I'm like, okay, I've got to zero in. And one idea that we had that we're using with some of our clients and just the thought process is, starting with ChatGPT and asking it, you want to solve a problem, or here's what I do. Here's who I am. I'm a professional X is what I do. What responsibilities, what tasks should I be focused on every day? And see how that breaks down. And then ask, how can you help me with that? And then that just becomes very specific to what you might be doing every day. It's a backwards way, maybe a reverse engineering way to do it. But like for me, when I'm talking to you, I'm preparing for a podcast. Well, there's things I can do to help me do that, right? And so like that's just a way of thinking. Like if I told it, well, I'm a podcast guy, what are my responsibilities? Like it might jar some things loose. Like, yeah, okay, let me try that. So that's what we're doing. It's just an experimental process where you can say, how can I take my game to a little bit of a higher power or a higher level? And say, because it's just like you said earlier, it's those repetitive tasks or things that you just wouldn't have done that way because it would have just taken a little too long. But now you could do it that way. You have that assistant, right? Anyway, but I appreciate that. Yeah. So I know this year, you have your event next week, but what do you think about like franchisee? Like, where do you see this going in terms of training? Is there anything formal that has to happen eventually where you give people some guidance and resource? Or where do you see it going in terms of training franchisees to train their teams to be more efficient with it?
Yeah, I think it'll be much like any other new innovations that we need to teach franchisees or in our own corporate teams, but helping them just understand use cases, understand, again, like I said, how to use it responsibly. I think that guidance is important, and just to make sure that we're doing it consistently across the brand. We do want to make sure that our customers are having the same type of brand experience, no matter what location they're working with. And so I think making sure that we provide the guidance and best practices for franchisees through training, ongoing training, not just new franchisee training, will be really important. And I think just continuing to have conversations about AI. I mean, to your point, there's so many use cases, and it's easy to overthink. Like I have to have a perfect reason to use it, and it's almost backwards. It's kind of like everything's a reason to use it. Well, one of the things that I started doing with my marketing team is in our weekly meetings, before we close out the meeting, we have what we call an AI moment. And we just kind of go around the room and say, hey, did anybody do anything cool with AI this week, or read anything cool or learn anything new about it? And so it's really interesting to hear what people share, because it can be stuff they used in their role, in their professional role, or it can be stuff they used, personally for it to help. So maybe it's planning a vacation, or we had one of the people on our team recently who's a big Bachelor fan and was going to be planning a party, a watch party for the show The Bachelor. And so she had ChatGPT help her with the text invite to all of her friends, where she told it, I want it to have a lot of puns that have to do with The Bachelor and blah, blah. And it wrote up this great script for it. So it was really funny. It was just people starting to think about how they could use it personally versus professionally.
Yeah, no, exactly. I kind of look at it like a sidekick, the way I say you should make it a sidekick, because it stimulates the creativity. Like you think of reasons, you start to understand, oh, wow, this could really help here. This could really help my client. This could help my customer. It's really about helping too. I think I wanted to ask you a question about this whole concept, because where this sort of leads is this AI becomes part of your team. It is representing your brand. And you talked earlier about quality assurance and making sure we're taking the lead and the empathy we want to use inside our communications, depending on what the brand is and or what problem we're trying to solve. But I feel like is there something in your mind, and maybe you haven't thought it all the way through yet, but when you think about brand values, mission, vision, things that are central to the brands, obviously that alignment is key. Do you see it as being somewhere you're going to have to define this AI's persona, and make sure it aligns right and that it's managed right and used right? I mean, do you think that has to be something more official where you actually think it through a little? because I feel like it could get away from people pretty quick if they're not thinking of it that way. Oh, we can just do more, faster, better, cheaper, but like it still has to be you, though. You know?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it certainly right now, and who knows where things will go in the future, but having that human complement to it is really important. And I think from how it becomes ingrained in our businesses, it's going to be something that's part of every employee handbook and part of every operations manual and all the places where we talk about other software and technology. There's now just going to need to be an extension of that applies to and covers AI as well. But one of our core values is be curious and innovate. And I think that there's nothing more about AI than being curious about it and finding the ways to innovate with it.
Yeah, well, that's another, right. So it's like, it's a part of, it can also, how do you make it a part of your identity? Like that's a part of how you guys are. And so we use AI this way. We're curious. We like to be innovative. So cool. So I'm going to ask you to summarize a little. All right, I'm going to tell you, you're definitely using AI in your business today, and you are definitely ahead of many people I talk to. So like, if you could summarize the key elements from the marketing, from a CMO, at this point, and I realize we're all learning every day, but at this stage, from as you look back and as you look forward a little, what are the key elements, do you think, of a successful, of integrating AI successfully into your marketing strategies?
I think it is not being afraid of it, just getting in there and starting to play with it, because that's the only way you're really going to start to figure out what some of those, it's really the only way you're going to train your mind to start thinking in every task I'm doing throughout the day. Is there a faster, more efficient way I could do this using AI? Once you start finding better ways to do things, you start thinking that way more because it just starts to come naturally. So I think you don't have to have a reason to start using it. Just get in there and start playing around with it. And I think that's a good start. One of the analogies that I've heard is you can't learn to swim by reading a book. You can read and understand the principles of swimming, but until you get in the water and actually start doing the motions, that's how you're going to really learn to swim. And it's the same with AI. You can read all the articles about it and get completely overwhelmed that way. But until you start playing with the tools, that's where you'll really start getting comfortable with it. So I think that's an important thing. And then you'll naturally start finding some ways to be more efficient, whether it's changing a workflow or whether it's just saying, hey, I'm stuck on figuring out how I should do this, rather than Googling the best tool and going into a wormhole of reading 5 different websites and trying to, figure that out. I've used it to go into ChatGPT and say, hey, I'm trying to manipulate a photo in this way. I'm sure there's an easy way to do it, but I don't know what it is. What's a tool I can use? Get me to that website or give me the instructions to be able to do that. So it's probably a long tangent, but just all that to say, you don't have to know why you're going to use it, and just go in there and start using it.
Yeah, well, that's one of your principles. Be curious, right? I think that's
exactly.
Yeah, you just have to be willing to interact with it, is what it is. It's not something you're right. It's not, don't wait for something to tell you, oh, you should go use this tool, this AI tool for it. No, it's go interact now and learn about it and see, it'll stimulate those ideas. So it's interesting because it affects us personally all the way through what we do, what our teams do, what families do. I talk to my son, he's in college. We talk about it. How's he leveraging it? I mean, and of course there's a whole thing around that. What do the universities what are the rules? Some have rules, some don't. It's interesting, but I've encouraged him to be curious. Exactly. I think that's the best word. I said, don't hold back. Don't, because by the time they figure it out, everybody else will be using it anyway. So just don't wait. Don't be, you're only going to learn. You're only going to get better at what you're studying. So, but it's affecting it.
I saw something on LinkedIn recently from Jason Pfeiffer, who's the editor-in-chief of Entrepreneur Magazine, and he posted this video. It was a video of a news story from back in the 90s when Burger King first started accepting credit cards. And watching, they were interviewing people sitting in Burger King, asking them how they felt about Burger King now accepting credit cards. And people were largely panicking. They were thinking it was going to slow down the process. They were thinking it was going to be a passing fad. They were saying, if you don't have enough cash to buy a hamburger, you shouldn't be buying hamburgers. It was all these crazy reactions because this was going to change the whole fast food buying experience, and it was freaking people out. And now I don't know that anyone pays cash for a hamburger anymore.
You almost can't.
So I feel like yeah, exactly. I think especially for, I think about my kids now who are young, and they're going to grow up not knowing a life before any of this, as far as how they'll go through school and everything else. And so it's scary because we don't know exactly how it's going to pan out, but ignoring it rather than embracing it isn't going to help anything. We need to, the sooner we can get comfortable and find all the good benefits to it and educate ourselves on what to be careful about and what to look out for and share that with our children. I think that's the better way to approach it.
Yeah, no, I think that's exactly it. I mean, I think engagement is very important. If there's a message for the audience, it's engagement. It's because if we're not aware, we can't participate in the way this shapes our world. And it's going to affect education. It's going to affect healthcare. It's going to affect how we work. And I think if you're engaged, you can raise your hand and give your input. And that's what we need to do. Like, not even should do, need to do. And so it's good to, I feel like you're totally aligned in all your brands. So you got everybody beating to that drum. And so before I let you go, anything you want to share with the audience, or any final thoughts you wanted to impart to the audience?
I mean, I guess just going back to encouraging people to get out there and just know it can find a few things that work well for you to start dipping your toe in, whether it's following some people on LinkedIn who are smart on the topic, or whether it's just sitting in on a webinar. There is a ton of information out there, that some great introductory webinars on it. The IFA has a great series that they did, a 3-part series on AI. That's a great place to start. So I think that would be my biggest piece of advice. We've had a lot of fun learning about it at Buzz Franchise Brands, and we're not going to stop. So and I'm always happy to talk AI or throw ideas around, or give anyone advice on how to incorporate it into their teams.
Well, thank you very much. It's been an enlightening conversation, and I think we can have a lot more of these enlightening conversations. I feel like that word's like every day's enlightening. But no, this has been great. And as I said, you are definitely right where I am. I'm excited. It's been great to hear how you're doing things, because you are doing it at a higher level. I think a lot of the first steps here would be to leverage it in engagement and helping with that first line of defense when you're marketing, and you guys are doing that and just improving experience, right? The customers, and it's a combination. It's the tool and the team, and it just raises the bar for you. And you've been doing it for, you said, about 3 years approximately. You've been working on these, so you've been doing it a while, and
probably
it's been
something really like that.
Yeah. So,
and I think now, I mean, there's so much better technology now than there was when we started dipping our toe in. I think especially with, ChatGPT from the beginning, but even recently just being more multimodal, and now being able to speak to it and being able to upload images to it. That's a whole nother level of use cases. And I could go on and on about all the different crazy use cases that are out there, but I won't.
Well, a huge thank you. And I know you have a lot to do today. I know you're planning for a big event next week. So it's been an honor to have you here. And thank you for taking the time. And I definitely want to have you back. I want to check in. I don't know if we can wait a whole year. We might have to check in, a little more frequently with this AI stuff, right? But anyway,
I might be gone. I might be a robot by then.
Let's not go there, right? Let's all chip in and be ready with our voice. That's what I would say about everything. But a huge thank you to you,
Absolutely.
Angela Pauls, Chief Marketing Officer of Buzz Brands. Thank you for being on the show today.
Thanks, Rob.